29. The vast multi-leveled room was dimly lit and filled with the buzzing and clacking of faraway noises. What purpose the facility had once held was lost on the travelers, but there seemed to be many walls all over that seemed somewhat temporary, usually sectioning off areas with desks and chairs. Nails stood tall enough to see over these walls, and was always looking this way and that with its imposing red-eyed gaze.
Say, Nails,
Medea began.
What was this place for, originally? I'm not an administrative model. You should ask one of the others.
It responded, not really looking at her.
Oh, come on, you have to know something. What did you even do for this whole time when the great ones were gone? Stare into a corner.
It paused its searching over the walls and gazed back at Medea, who did her best not to flinch.
Yes, I know some things. I do not mean to keep information from you, friend Medea. I only say that you should ask an administrative model, because my information will no doubt be imperfect for the question you have asked. From my understanding, this is a central hub for the research done by Lord Gabnid and his team. There are many such facilities constructed all over Lennis, and this place connects to the ones Lord Gabnid deemed most important for the mission.
Chedsney's ears perked up at that.
Mission? What was their mission?
Nails's intimidating stare shifted to him.
I have been instructed to not answer that question. You can't tell us anything.
After a time it spoke again.
In the general sense, I can say that the purpose of the Great Ones coming to Lennis was to raise up the primitive society here, and bridge the gap between the cultures and people of Lennis and the people of Rhaegar. What were the Great Ones like?
Medea asked, getting excited, her mind filling with more and more questions to ask.
Hormu, Rhaegan male. Security officer. Sophie, Rhaegan female. Diplomatic advisor. Gabnid, Rhaegan male. Team leader. Chief researcher. High patriarch.
She groaned.
Not like that, although that is cool. I mean, like, what were they like as people?
At this, the automaton seemed to actually display some true emotion. It seemed to balk at the mere suggestion, shaking its head.
I cannot gossip about the Great Ones. That would be blasphemy.
Just then, a group of automatons looking very much like DC-10 and SV-796 emerged from the darkness around one corner of the hall. They stood in it. They were remarkably quiet considering their gait was jerky and uncoordinated.
Stay back, I will handle this,
Nails promised. It stood in front of the living party members.
DC 451, SV 854, QS 947. All of you stop.
One of them did slow for a moment. The other two seemed to not hear Nails at all.
I have no choice.
Its eyes flashed, and two thin beams of light cut through the darkness, and where they passed, metal bodies fell apart as it sliced clean through. When Nails was sure the automatons had stopped moving completely, it turned to Chedsney and Medea.
Do not fear. I will keep you safe while you conduct your business here.
Stammering in surprise, Chedsney could only say,
Thanks, big guy.
Mouth was over by their remains, looking through them and muttering in awe. Medea knocked on Nails' hard plating and said,
You are awesome. Thanks a bunch, Nails.
After that, they cut the chatter to a minimum and began exploring a bit more carefully, always with Nails' watchful gaze over them. As they had tried to navigate the first floor, they soon discovered what Mouth had said was true. There were many such chests locked behind glowing red walls, very similar to the one that had held the children in their cell, though these looked much sturdier. In fact, when Medea touched one, she was given a painful shock. Seeing their interest in the chests, Nails led them to the floor above, where they found a secure hatch down to the sealed room below.
What the heck is this thing?
Chedsney asked, looking down into the first such chest they had actually gotten to open. It was some kind of Rhaegan artifact, unquestionably, but as for its purpose, it was beyond him. He pulled it out, surprised at its heft. It was a metal cylinder with two handles on one side, one electronic display on the side, and another on the top. Nails answered instantly.
That is a heavy energy weapon, the Psycho Beam Cannon.
The automaton grabbed it easily, moved Chesney to hold it properly. Both his hands on the handles, the rear of the device resting on his shoulder, and his eye pressed up to the display on top.
Put the target inside the crosshairs and press the trigger.
Curious, he turned the weapon to the wall and pressed the trigger. The weapon charged up, then blasted out a strange white force that knocked Chesney back a step and vaporized a large hemispherical chunk out of the wall.
Whoa! It's like the Z Eraser, only bigger. Gimme that!
Medea said, practically ripping it out of his hands.
I said the next super weapon was mine. I called it.
As soon as the bulk of the weight was in her arms, she let out a yelp of surprise and almost completely lost her balance.
Why is this thing so heavy?
She struggled to aim it, and when she fired, it sent her backwards hard, though Mouth caught her easily.
This is so not fair.
She grumbled as she handed the weapon back to Chesney.
Okay, next. Super weapon is mine.
When a group of the flying needle drones happened by, Chesney asked to try his weapon out. He caught only part of the one he fired at, but curiously that one started to go haywire and fire upon the drones. After that, Nails pointed his arm at the group, and a searing fountain of flames erupted from there and engulfed the drones until they fell and were silent.
That device has the added effect of disrupting neural pathways in the target, causing temporary hallucinations, or in the case of automatons, RAM corruption. Huh? It does what now? It causes the enemy to become confused, friend Chesney. Also, if you are interested in more of those containers, there are more this way.
Nails led them around the floor, carefully avoiding getting too close to the floor's large open space in the middle. They walked past long dead machines lurking in shadows, more temporary walls, displays, and dusty chairs. Ancient, desiccated husks of plants sticking out of pots like bones, until at last they were led to a poorly lit hall with a dead end. Whatever it had once been for, it now seemed to be used for storage. Decayed boxes, once piled on top of one another, now turned into a pile of decayed detritus. Long faded paintings propped up on a wall by some stacked chairs. And there, sitting in the middle, was something like an emergency chest, but also different. It was colored pink, for one, and decorated with purple and yellow designs. Also, it was turned over like someone had kicked it over or perhaps thrown it, ages and ages ago. A feeling came over Medea then, looking at it.
Let me open it, Chesney. Please.
Something felt so terribly familiar. Was it the design? The feeling she got when looking at this was that it was something Sophie would have liked, maybe. It was so hard to pin down, like the shadow of a thought she may have only ever had in a dream half remembered. Her hands traced the designs, feeling the smooth enameled surface. Upon turning it over to sit rightly on the floor, there was a string and a tag attached, though the writing was blank. Her heart fluttered to see it. What is going on with me? Why am I feeling so nervous or no? Is this dread? Anticipation? Confusion? The emotion was complex and unfamiliar, almost like opening it would change things she never wanted to be changed. Slowly, gently, inevitably, her finger rose and pressed into the purple indicator light, and the container snaked open quietly. A dress? Without really even thinking, she slowly stood and pulled the fabric up with her, holding it up so she could see it. The fabric was exquisite, the most luxurious she'd ever seen in her life. A beautiful, impossibly vibrant design. Dark blue leggings with pale cloud designs spiraling up the leg. The leggings merging into a sleeveless top with a silvery pattern around the armholes. Also included was a pale orange skirt dotted with constellations and suns, tied with a deep amethyst sash. Lastly, and most strikingly, was something like a combination between a shawl and a cape and shoulder pauldron. It was meant to cover the neck and shoulders in a stiff material, orange, with pale yellow cross designs, and then hang over her back. The shoulder portion was raised up from the body to accentuate the curves of the arm, and possibly for protection. As for the back portion, unlike a cape, the design of it was jagged and artistic. immediately eye-catching.
This was the dress Gabnid gave Sophie, isn't it?
She asked, her voice quiet.
Affirmative,
Nails answered.
This dress, it changed everything. I don't know how I know that, but I feel so sad when I see it.
She looked it over for long moments, her face shifting emotions as she did so. At last, she turned to Chesney.
Do you think is it wrong that I want to wear this?
He cautiously thought up a response. He knew she, like him, had misgivings about how much influence their predecessors had on them. He wondered if she was asking the question at face value, or because of her deeper concern.
Well, in all honesty, I can't think of anyone more worthy. Take of that what you will.
She smiled at that, at first a little sadly, but then she nodded and smiled more genuinely.
Okay. Just go around the corner. I'll be right out.
They did so, and while they waited, Mouth leveled his wizened gaze at Chesney.
So, about that talk. You can't do things like that and not make me insanely curious.
Chesney groaned. Whatever. We have to talk about it at some point.
We don't have a lot of details. Joanne, the High Pilgrim at the Throne of the Immortals, claimed we were the second advent of Cormu and Sophie. Daphne, the great spiritualist, told me and Medea that somehow we were Regan. Somehow, 13 years ago, Medea washed up on the shore of Ratsurt. As for me, I grew up in a fishing village in Rayold. I even have a mother. We don't know what it means. We don't know how it's possible. We don't know what happened to the great ones. All we've been able to confirm is that certain artifacts left behind by them work for us. Well, Medea was right. That was a very disappointing explanation. Okay, but then, why were you down here in this facility? That's an even longer story.
He went on to explain, in brief, that he accidentally turned on the ancient machine Dalgren, their quest to track down Cormu's equipment to slay Kamat and destroy Dalgren, and how they were sidetracked to Sasquatch when Zagos constructed Noigren, and escape after its destruction.
And now, with Cormu's things destroyed, we're trying to find clues on what to do next.
Mouth had listened patiently, and if he was surprised at what they had started and done, he did not show it on his face. After Chesney's explanation was complete, he stroked his beard and thought,
That's an incredible story, and you say it all so casually.
Chesney shrugged.
What else can I do? If it's not me and her, it's nobody. If we win, we win. If we don't...
He let the thought hang. Mouth was about to start into another round of questioning, when soft footsteps approached, and Medea appeared around the corner.
So, how do I look?
She asked shyly, hands nervously wringing in front of her. Words died on Chesney's lips. Meeting her eyes for a flash of a moment, he was back in the minstrel's tent, their eyes catching in the middle of the song. Only this time she was dressed the part. His heart beat so hard it almost hurt. Objectively, the clothes were perhaps a size too big. The shoulder pieces were off-center, the skirt cinched too tight, but he could notice none of those things. Seeing Medea now was like watching the past come alive. His mind reeled, and he would have lost his balance if Mouth hadn't been standing right next to him. His voice was crushed inside his own throat, completely incapable as he was now to respond. Feeling awkward in the silence that followed, Medea said,
The material is actually really strong, and it feels like some kind of force around me like Cormu's armor. I think.
Still, more silence, and she swallowed a lump in her throat.
Please say something.
Mouth, sensing he perhaps should not be the first to speak, looked down at Chesney and gave him a gentle nudge. Slowly, like the world was only just coming free from time being frozen, Chesney took in a breath and stammered.
It's good. No, it's beautiful. I mean you're beautiful. In that. Well, I mean you're always beautiful.
Sensing the time was right, Mouth interrupted.
I think he's trying to say you look stunning, my dear.
She bit her lip and involuntarily stood on her toes.
Really? It's not weird?
In truth, Chesney had no idea how to respond to that question. His body hadn't felt alien to him in a long time, but seeing Medea like that almost made him wonder if perhaps it should. What part of him thought she looked good in that dress? The 13-year-old boy who'd been mesmerized seeing a pretty girl in a cave with the sunset weaving through her hair. The him that had fallen in love and had been too stupid to notice for far too long. Or some alien part of him from some ancient being, seeing some long-forgotten memory. Quickly he realized that question didn't matter. These feelings, wherever their origin, made him happy. And more importantly, they made her happy. That's all he cared about.
No, it's not weird. You look amazing. How does it feel wearing it?
She laughed a giddy laugh, though it was obvious she was having some of the same worries he had been having.
It feels good wearing it. Maybe even too good. I know I will. You know how I feel about this sometimes. But putting this on, it felt really peaceful, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. And I know it doesn't super fit exactly right, but it feels like home?
Chesney offered. A bit of guilt crept over her face.
Yeah, and when I admit that to myself, I feel like I'm betraying Dad and myself. I've fought it for so long, and now suddenly I want to put on the dress.
Chesney walked to her, held her shoulder sewed.
Hey, I think we both need to stop beating ourselves up about all this stuff. It's not about them or the past. It's about us right now. And finding a piece of your heritage and feeling connected to it, that's not a betrayal of your parents, so. Denying that part of yourself, that's what would really be betraying them and betraying you.
She grabbed him in a fierce hug, which he gently reciprocated.
Thank you,
she whispered. While the two of them had their private moment, Mouth had opened up his sketchbook to a certain page.
Uncanny, absolutely incredible,
he mumbled to himself. On one page was a charcoal sketch of a bust of Sophie he had found in one of his many excursions, and on the opposite side he began furiously dashing his pencil across the page, trying to capture the moment Medea had walked around the corner. The pair of them separated, red-faced from having such a personal moment with spectators.
Nails, you don't have a problem with this, right?
Medea asked while gently unruffling her new clothes.
No. I believe a part of Lord Gabnid would be happy to know someone made use of it till.
That got her attention.
Really? Why do you say that?
Nails shook its head.
Perhaps I have said too much. Let us continue.
She pursed her lips in disappointment, but she let the matter drop. On another floor, there was another chest with a weapon in it. Medea's eyes lit up avariciously, but her glee was soured once more when this new device was again far too heavy for her to wield long-term.
Okay, this is getting ridiculous,
she huffed, practically shoving the thing into Chesney's arms.
Hey, you got your fancy magic armor you always wanted,
he joked. Nails explained immediately what it was, pointing to a device on his arm that looked almost identical.
That is a handheld flamethrower. With it, you can essentially use a fire all-level spell without using your life force as fuel.
Medea grumbled even louder at being denied a tool with an element she didn't have. Chesney considered which of the two devices he'd rather use. The flamethrower was overall more powerful, but the other one had the confusion effect. He considered asking Medea's opinion, but it was clear he was only going to get a huffy answer. In the end, he decided that being able to aim indiscriminately and still win was too tempting to pass up on. He stashed the psycho beam in his shield and strapped the flamethrower to his back.
Wow, this thing is incredibly dangerous. Did the Reagans use things like this all the time?
Chesney asked, directing the question at Nails.
No. As you can see, the weapon was locked behind a force field. For protection, the Masters relied on their guardians and their own abilities. Things like the Psycho Beam and Flamethrower were for emergencies, or for those less inclined to use their spirits.
Mouth smiled ruefully.
Well, I can attest that the protectors left behind in some of these Reagan ruins sure were up to snuff. You are lucky to have escaped unscathed, Lanusian. Those facilities must have been broken down beyond repair. Well, I wouldn't exactly say I escaped unscathed,
Mouth replied, patting a part of his body currently covered in armor. On the same floor they found the flamethrower. There was an entire section of the floor that was cut off by more permanent walls, but no access. Nails led them to the next floor and another set of stairs downward leading to a door.
This was one of the offices Sophie used.
Nails explained.
Cormu didn't have much use for an office, so his was repurposed for storage not long after this facility was built.
Chesney noticed Midia's expression turn rather intense, but she stepped inside before he could even comment on it. The rest of them stepped inside, excited at a chance to peer into the lives of the ancient beings of legend. Maddeningly, though, the office was devoid of much of anything that could easily be attributed to Sophie. Nothing personal. Coat rack, desk, chair. A tall cabinet. Instead of paintings on the wall, there were large black displays, now long dead. On one wall behind the chair, though, was a simple rack attached to the wall, with a belt and sheathed sword attached. Above the rack was some kind of note in yellow paper, in the same archaic form Lanusian writing the statue had been written in, so faded it was almost unreadable. Stop forgetting to take this. Stay safe out there. Cry. The belt cracked and fell apart when Midia picked up the sword, but the sword and scabbard seemed completely intact. The scabbard was a shiny enameled paint color, not particularly ornate, but there was some kind of small picture stuck to the surface. It was of an animal that seemed really similar to a gubbo, but done in an unrealistically cute style. Midia titled her head.
I don't get it. What's this thing for, Nails?
She asked, pointing to the small picture. It looked and responded.
That is a sticker. A special small piece of art people can adhere to other objects to personalize them. Well, it's certainly very cute.
She agreed. She pulled the sword out. When she did, she grinned and nodded appreciatively.
Whoa ho ho. Now this is what I'm talking about.
The sword was much, much thinner than Cormu's had been. The handle was small enough to easily fit in Midia's hand, and the guard covered her hand fully. The metal of the guard and pommel was rose gold, ornately done in thin but strong curling designs, with 2 jeweled wings on the sides, and a larger blue sapphire on the pommel. The blade itself was flat but very thin and narrow, like an épée or rapier. It was of that same white, almost glassy material that Cormu's sword had been made of, but it had a different quality to it. For one thing, it lacked that strange, indistinct quality around the edges, as though it had been vibrating like Cormu's sword had. Midia sighed.
Where were you last week?
But then she gleefully tied it to her belt.
Finally! Now I get my own super weapon. New?
She said, sticking out her tongue at Chesney.
You really are impossible. Do you think we could use it to destroy Dahlgren? Or kill Kmat, though?
He didn't want to destroy her enthusiasm, but his gut was telling him no. Having held Cormu's blade for so long, he had come to a certain understanding of its measure and strength. Something felt different with this sword.
I don't really know how to put it into words, but I don't think so. Still, all options open. Can I see it?
She handed it over. He looked it over carefully. He tested the edge.
Actually, this might be sharper than Cormu's sword, just a bit. Maybe it was used less and has more of the original edge. But yeah, I think if we tried to use this against Lokjorn, it would have snapped like a twig. Well, damn. Worth a shot.
They spent some time really rifling through all the drawers and cabinets, but there was nothing else but ruined stationery. Midia's calm demeanor quickly soured the longer she searched and found nothing. She took 2 full rounds of the room before she got too frustrated and stopped. She kicked the desk.
Ugh. Why didn't you leave anything important behind? A picture? A note even. Where did you all go?
She screamed in frustration.
I'm so tired of finding pieces of you. I just want answers.
Chesney felt much the same way. All these little glimpses into the lives of those who came before were fascinating, but frustrating too. Still, Midia's frustration seemed much more personal. He turned to Nails.
What have you and the other automatons been doing this whole time, after they left?
It took a longer moment than usual for the hulking machine to respond.
Existing. Waiting. Hoping. Many of those who still function do so only because they have thrown themselves into old routines. They hope that if the facilities are still functional, one day, the masters shall return. And what about you? A guardian unit has no use for something like hope.
He didn't know what to say to that. They left. Chesney looked for an opportunity to talk to Medea about how she was feeling. Unfortunately, they rose into a swarm of security bots, evidently called here by something. A half-dozen wiry automatons jerkily blocking them in, as well as flying drones, and another much larger flying drone that looked like a huge insect, with a set of sparking rods underneath.
Stay back,
Nails intoned dryly. His back opened up, revealing several rows of red and white rods, all standing in a formation. In the next moment, the rods shot out of his back and flew in the direction of their enemies. With each impact, they exploded, and their foes were blown apart and torn to shreds. The blast was so strong that much of the shrapnel struck Nails, but the rest of them were unharmed. Mouth's expression was somewhere between amazed and appalled.
Okay, I believe you. I was lucky. No way I could have survived something like that if there had been defenses like that in the other ruins. What was that? They are called missiles. Now, please remain distant. I have been damaged and need to repair myself before we proceed.
The huge robot proceeded to remove much of the shrapnel from itself, then stomp over to the wreckage. One arm extended out, and a beam of light seemed to dissolve the metal into gas or mist and suck it in. All the nicks and scratches on Nails disappeared.
Absolutely incredible.
Mouth mumbled again, furiously scribbling in his journal.
More progress in one day than in a year.
Chesney took the opportunity to gesture to Medea to step away with him.
You're angry.
Her fists clenched and unclenched.
Yes, I'm angry. I have every right to be.
She started pacing and harshly whispering.
You already know one of the reasons I wanted to go on this journey was to find out who I really am. Strabo, Joan, Daphne, all of them giving us little hints about who or what we are. And here, finally, we're in an intact ruin of the Great One. But it's like they're taunting us from the past. All kinds of things are being revealed, but none of it matters. The statue, these automatons, this dress, her sword, her damn office even. And nothing. I feel even less sure about who I am the more we find out.
She looked back down the stairs to her office.
You were supposed to tell me who I am, who my parents really are. If there are no answers here, then...
She looked back at Chesney, unable to hide her pain at not knowing.
Then where the hell else are we supposed to look?
He put up his hands defensively.
I don't really have any good answers for you, Medea, but there is a lot of doors left for us to go through.
She sighed, long and weary. It looked like she was deflating before his eyes.
I know that, I do. I'm sorry I'm being like this. I think I'm just really tired. Just give me some space for a while, okay? I just need time to calm down. You bet. I've got your back.
She offered a weary smile.
I know you do. Thank you, really.
And how did he feel about everything? Beyond his hopes that the underground would hold clues for what to do next, he had fallen back into his old and most trusted defense mechanism, stepping one foot in front of the other and minding other people's worries. Maybe, he reasoned, it was easier for him because he knew that someday he would be able to ask his mother about the truth. But Medea didn't have that same luxury. He would be lying, though, if he didn't admit there were doubts worming their way into his heart. Daphne had told them, swore to them they weren't the children of the Great Ones. What did that leave, then? Where did Medea come from? Who, then, was Chesney's father? He hated thinking about things he had no answers to.
Mouth Nails,
he began.
In your exploring or knowledge, do you know of any other Regans who came to Lennis?
Mouth opened up his book.
No. Everything I've seen was very clear that it was only those three. I can say I did not meet with any other Regans while stationed here,
Nail said.
I have not been to every facility, however. And you really don't know where they went? What happened when they left? One day they were here. Then, they never returned. No signals, no commands, no account logins. Not long after, the surface was devastated. And then nothing until today, when Sophie's crown was used to open the fire door. You could tell we opened the door? Wait, they stopped returning to the underground before the surface was devastated. How long before? Not long. Days. Were they killed? I have said I do not know, Friend Chesney. I and the others left behind are just as confused and curious as you.
Nothing else for it, they continued exploring, a little more quietly and set apart than before. When they reached a certain part of the floor they were exploring, part of a junction between two halls, Nails turned to Chesney.
I have noticed, Friend Chesney, that you are less well-equipped than the others. Is there a reason for this? Well, long story short, all my armor and weapons were destroyed.
He intentionally did not remind this ancient relic that he was responsible for getting Cormu's things destroyed.
Then, in the interest of your protection, I'd like to show you something.
He led them down one hallway to something that basically looked like a locker room, only the lockers all were made of some transparent material. In one of the lockers, there was some clothes hanging.
This is a spare set of Cormu's backup equipment. It should protect you. Wait, is there a sword here too?
He gasped, practically glued to the locker door while pressing his face in close to see.
No. Cormu only had the one. Damn it.
After Nails put in a code to the locker to open it, Chesney looked over the new garments. Dark silver in color, the clothes were like a cross between a full-body jumpsuit and a full set of armor. The outer layer was a thick, sturdy, and somewhat smooth material, and attached to it were numerous hard plates, covering every vulnerable spot, while still giving him almost complete freedom of movement. The boots were long and black, with ratcheting snaps instead of laces. Lastly, the helmet reminded him greatly of Cormu's helm, though it was a somewhat paler silver than the armor, and the visor seemed to be missing. Everyone waited outside while he got changed. He assumed this was going to be a little big on him, and it was, but when he put the helmet on, something happened. Some internal force, or strings, or something squeezed his body, tightening the clothes to be a skin-tight fit. Additionally, the empty space where his visor wasn't instantly filled with a thin, perfectly transparent field, not unlike the prison walls, only completely colorless. He looked at himself in the nearby mirror. Midia's going to be so mad. Some way, somehow, these clothes managed to make even his somewhat subdued 13-year-old frame look actually intimidating. He brandished the flamethrower. He couldn't help but smile, looking at himself. Not only did he think he looked really good in this, but he finally had some protection again. He dearly missed having a normal weapon, true, but this went a long way to making him feel normal at last. Satisfied, he walked around the corner.
All right, folks, do I look?
Midia cursed and threw up her hands.
Oh, come on, what the hell is that? Why do you get a cool badass suit again and I get a dress? You take that off right now, we are switching.
Chesney jumped out of her grasp and used Nails as an obstacle between them.
No. Hey, hands off. You got your cool armor thing, no complaining. No complaining.
She seethed, trying to duck this way and that to fake him out.
You got a flamethrower and a cool energy beam thing. I have a sharp stick. Have I upset you, young ones?
Nails said, once again losing the cold monotone in his voice. His hands were up, trying to keep from harming the children as they chased each other around him. He remained in place and turned this way and that to try to see what was going on.
Best to let this one play out on its own, big fella.
Mouth said, chuckling at the situation.
Gods, I wish I had that much energy in me.
The moment had helped to relieve some of the tension that had built. Once the children had tired themselves out, Mouth remarked that they were actually quite close to the surface now, and led them to another strange door that dreadfully reminded Chesney of something, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it.
So where does this go? You said the throne of the immortals earlier, but where?
Medea said, looking the door over. It was paint-clad in ornate design like the fire door had, and set into an outcropping on the far wall. Above it was a very familiar symbol, a large teardrop.
Well, maybe it's faster if I just show you. Although, if you would be so kind, Medea.
Mouth said, gesturing to the door. Thinking of the message, she started looking for a piece of the dress to press up against the central indent. While she did, she asked,
Hold on, if this door needs this dress as a key, how did you get in here? Well, something of a trade secret,
he said. She turned and leveled a cool gaze at him.
An actual answer, please. Fine, and I jammed a bunch of things into the side. There was an electric shock, and it opened. I hadn't opened it again, so I figured I would take a look around, happy. Huh.
Chesney remarked.
I guess you really lucked out finding us here.
Mouth shrugged.
Happens sometimes. I usually manage okay. You don't get to be dungeon crawling at my age without a lot of wits and luck.
With a final hip bump, Medea got the door opened, revealing a very short staircase up leading to another door. At their approach, the other door opened easily, taking them outside. Not only were they at the throne of the immortals, they were back on the peak, where Joanne had given them the armor, and sent them back to Daphne via a secret passageway with a boat in it. Looking down the great hill, things looked slightly different. While impossible to exactly describe how, Chesney got the feeling that something had changed, but what it could be eluded him. It was Medea that noticed first.
Look. The entrance to the pilgrimage has been boarded up, and I don't think I see hardly anyone walking around down there. Yeah, it's not exactly open to the public anymore. I snuck up here.
Mouth added.
I'm amazed you even got here, considering the trouble we had taking a ride.
Chesney said. He turned to Medea.
Well, what do you think? Should we try to sneak down, take the network to Barsa's, and try to find Daphne again somehow?
She shook her head.
No. Not only would we have to bypass some mountains to get back to that cave, but I think we should try the other doors. We have the dress. I want to see where it takes us.
He nodded.
Yeah, me too. Just thought I should ask.
He turned to Mouth.
And what about you?
The old man laughed.
If you two little runts think I'm letting you out of my sight anytime soon, you've got another thing coming. Do you have any idea how much I've learned today? I've spent my life trying to find Linus's secrets. I'm certain the answers are along the path you two are walking. Even if that means facing off against monsters like Kmat. I didn't get where I am now without taking risks.
Chesney was about to question him further, when he heard footsteps in the dirt along the path behind them.
Who's there?
He shouted, grabbing his new weapon and making ready to fight.
Sorry, just I heard talking.
A scared voice said, and a very silly-looking man walked out shyly from around a dirt outcropping. Chesney was about to be extremely confused when a sudden flash of memory hit him.
Wait, Joanne? Is that you? Sophie's Mercy, that is, Joanne?
Medea exclaimed.
I was so worried Zagos said you were dead.
The great researcher and high pilgrim Joanne had exchanged Cormu's armor for a set of traveling minstrel's clothes, presumably to help him escape unscathed.
Oh, I'm very much alive, Miss Medea. And I am very pleased to see you both alive as well. Why in the world are you still up here?
She asked, worry etched on her face. He looked rather thin.
Well, you see, I sort of got cold feet. I figured I'd wait a day or two before making my escape, but then his agents arrived in town. So then, I figured I'd wait for them to leave. Only they never did. More came, none of them pilgrims, and all I could do was hide in. Now travel is restricted even more. I still have some friends in town who sneak me food, but I'm too terrified to leave this mountain. Wow, that's awful,
Chesney said, feeling for the awkward position the man was in.
Is there anything we can do?
Joanne shook his head.
No. This place is my home, and I've come to terms with that. I've decided to stay, no matter what. And what about you? What are you doing here?
Medea answered this time.
Well, We were just exploring the ruins below here, and found our way here.
As she spoke, Joanne seemed to do a double take and regard Midia as if seeing her again for the first time.
My word, that dress. Midia, is that truly?
Shyly, she nodded.
Yes. This sword, too. Please don't be upset that I took them from the ruins. We kind of need them.
He shook his head emphatically.
I would never. Midia, you're an absolute vision. If anyone Lennis has a right to those, it's you.
She smiled ruefully.
Well, for good or ill, I can't deny that.
After that, they said their goodbyes and returned underground. After agreeing that the water door on the main level should be their next destination, they began to hurry down the many floors below them, with Nails constantly watching out for them and clearing the way. Before they'd gotten far, though, Midia saw something that caught her eye as they walked past a dark intersection.
Hold on. I think I saw something,
she said, looking down a black hallway.
I'll be right back.
Chesney, feeling nervous about the shadowy hall, followed her while leaving the other two to keep watch. She mumbled to herself, moving her head back and forth as she searched for something only she had any clue about.
There was something shiny. I just saw it out of the corner of my eye. Where is it, though? It wasn't some automaton or something? No. At least I don't think so. Chesney, could you give me a light?
He obliged, though he conjured a fire that was perhaps a bit large for the task at hand, and he wondered if he might accidentally set something on fire.
Aha!
She exclaimed, kneeling down and scooping up a small box that had been unseeable from his vantage point. She brought it to him, a small wooden box that fit in the palm of her hand. The hinge was broken and twisted, making it so the box could never be completely shut right again. From within she produced a ring.
Oh my! Did Gabnid propose to her? Well, it seems someone did.
He left unsaid that it was obvious she had not accepted.
More mysteries for the mystery pile. It's more like a mystery dumpster at this point.
She pocketed the ring and tossed the box.
I don't think I'll wear it. Just seems a bit too far. Plus, I'd much rather wear one someone meant to give to me. You know.
After a beat, Chesney asked,
Did you just ask me to ask you to marry me?
Her face turned red.
Idiot. I didn't mean it like, ugh. Whatever, just drop it.
He put up his hands.
Dropped. It's dropped.
Before long, they were down on the main floor once more, standing at the statue of Gabnid. It also had the same set of instructions they had seen under Zagos's temple. Your crown will open the fire, your dress will open the water, your ring will open the sky, your boots will open the earth. I send them to you, Sophie, with all my love. Gabnid.
Well, now we have a decision to make,
Midia said.
To the northwest, we can now use the ring to open the sky door, and to the northeast, we can open the water door.
Anyone have any suggestions?
I think our young Miss Midia should pick,
Mouth said.
What about you, young man? Fine by me,
Chesney offered. She bit her lip and swayed in place, thinking.
I think the sky door. Any particular reason? Well, I could come up with some rationalizations for that decision, but really, it just comes down to a feeling I have.
Pressing the ring into an indent in the middle of the door, it opened easily, and revealed a room very similar to the one they arrived in, with another vehicle ready to go into another dark tunnel.
Well, what's this now?
Mouth said excitedly, looking over everything with great interest.
Oh, is this your first time seeing one of these? Well, prepare to have your mind absolutely blown.
Midia seemed almost giddy at the prospect to show something off. Nails was the next to speak up, though.
Young masters, I must ask if you truly intend to take this native organism along still.
That was unexpected. Chesney had thought the matter with Mouth was settled.
What are you getting at, Nails?
The automaton was clearly uncomfortable. Whether it was because of Mouth, or because it found it difficult to speak its mind, he couldn't be sure.
I only mean that certain facilities were considered very sensitive by the masters.
This time, Medea was looking at him with a very disapproving glare.
Stop beating around the bush, Nails. What do you know that you're not saying?
The uncomfortable posture seemed to worsen.
In truth, very little. I only bring it up that the master had kept certain things secret, and some things may be dangerous. That is simply something you may want to consider.
Medea stomped up to Nails and pressed a finger against its hard metal exterior.
Well, in my opinion, all these Reigen secrets can go stuff themselves where the sun doesn't shine,
she said, though she actually used much fouler language.
Yeah. If they wanted their secrets kept, they should have come down here themselves and kept them,
Chesney added.
Is that going to be a problem? No, friends. No matter what, I am here to protect you, and I shall. I just wanted to make sure you understood the potential dangers.
Medea huffed and turned to enter the craft.
Come on, Mouth.
They all entered the vehicle with Mouth practically vibrating with excitement.
Are you telling me this ancient thing still works? You're right, Medea. This is going to blow his mind.
Chesney laughed. They all got seated, though Nails attached himself to something secure in the ceiling. Scribbling and muttering to himself like a madman, Mouth was taking all kinds of notes and hurried sketches of everything he saw. Once they started moving, though, Mouth dropped his pencil in awe. He looked through the now transparent tunnel walls.
Is that what I think it is? If you think it is Lennis's underground filled with man-made structures, you're right. They're everywhere. In all my years, I've barely scratched the surface.
They all spent some time watching the ruins pass them by at near impossible speeds. Then Chesney had a thought.
Nails, have you been this way? Yes,
it said in its odd deep voice.
Though not for a very, very long time. Since before the surface was devastated. My information on this facility is very limited, though there were many administrative models there. They should be able to explain better than I am able.
The craft went through its usual acceleration and deceleration, and then deposited them in another room exactly like the other departure points. What was different was it was very hot and humid.
Ugh, why?
Chesney whined.
This suit doesn't exactly breathe. I can switch now. Give me the dress.
Medea left a haughty, melodic tune.
I almost want to see how you look in it now. But no, I think I'm good.
The path out was a staircase leading up, which they took. Nails insisted on being in front, and Mouth took up a position beside the automaton. That was fine with the children. Their greatest power was in their magic. Ascending the stairs, though, the atmosphere changed drastically, and not for the better.
Something feels wrong here,
Chesney said, his finger itchy on the trigger. There was just something in the air. Something acrid. Decay. The scene up the stairs was vastly different than any other facility they'd been in. It felt like the inside of an abandoned greenhouse. The metal of the walls was pink, not the familiar oxidized copper green of the others. Either that or covered with some kind of mold or lichen that made it seem that way. The walls, the floor, even the ceiling was moist. The floor was also covered with dark stains and some shallow pools of unknown fluid. Lights were dim and covered with mosses and slime. Most striking, though, was that the room was filled with tall, cylindrical glass canisters. All of them cracked and shattered. Some filled still with some dark, murky liquid. Others filled with bones or other disgusting, fleshy shapes. Medea covered her mouth.
Oh gods, I'm going to be sick. What is this?
The rest of the room was taken up by a huge machine, somewhat like the parts of Noé Gren they had seen in the Tower Stone. Huge pipes and valves and bulging metal spheres of unknown purpose. All humming, all working. But underneath that there was something else. The sounds of creatures fighting, far away. Hooting, hollering, flapping, stomping.
Nails!
Medea stood close to the hulking being.
What is going on here?
It shook its head.
I do not know. Warix 310. Are you here still? RX 310.
There was a sparking sound somewhere on the other side of the great machine, and soon a jerking shape emerged. Another of the wiry automatons like DC-10, only it looked completely covered in some kind of moss or some other garbage.
Welk. C.
Nails was there, clearing away the foreign materials.
ARX unit. Focus. You are failing. Restart.
The other automaton was looking cleaner, but was not looking well. It made strange noises, stiffened, slackened.
Oh, Nails. Welcome to the Lifeform Research Laboratory. Nails. Welcome to the Lifeform Research Laboratory. Oh, Nails, welcome to the Lifeform Research Laboratory, Ryrie.
Now that the automaton was cleaner, it was easier to see that its body was damaged by scratch marks and gouges, and holes.
So badly damaged. ARX focus. What was going on here?
Shudderingly, with stops and starts and repeats, it tried to get across an answer to the question. When it had completed, it ceased functioning, and Nails could not reactivate it. This was its message.
Altering Reagan lifeforms to Linus's environment.
End of chapter.